For decades, Goldie Hawn was the bright light of Hollywood. That unmistakable laugh, the radiant smile, the effortless charm that made audiences feel lighter just watching her. She wasn't just a movie star, she was joy personified. From romantic comedies to iconic red carpet moments, Goldie seemed untouched by the darkness that often follows fame. But at 80, the truth behind that golden glow feels far more fragile than anyone imagined. Fans who grew up watching her now find themselves asking a painful question. Was the happiness we saw always real? Because behind the sparkle of stardom, Goldie has quietly faced battles that never made headlines. Battles that reshaped her life, her health, and her understanding of happiness itself. In recent years, those closest to her have noticed changes, subtle at first. A softer presence, fewer public appearances, a deeper vulnerability in interviews. The woman who once filled every room with laughter has begun speaking more openly about fear, aging, and the emotional weight of time. And it's that honesty that has left fans heartbroken. Not because Goldie has lost her light, but because we're finally seeing how much strength it took to keep it shining. At 80, her reality isn't about glamour or red carpets. It's about resilience, about confronting loss, about holding onto love in a world that moves on too quickly. This isn't just the story of a Hollywood legend growing older. It's the story of what happens when the brightest smile in the room has been carrying more than anyone ever knew. For most of her life, Goldie Hawn's smile felt like a promise of laughter, warmth, and a kind of happiness that seemed effortless. From her earliest days in Hollywood, she wasn't just admired, she was adored. Audiences didn't just watch Goldie, they felt her. She represented light in an industry often known for shadows. But behind that famous smile was a woman learning, very early on, how to survive. Goldie entered fame young, at a time when Hollywood rarely cared about emotional well-being. The pressure to be cheerful, desirable, and endlessly likable wasn't suggested, it was demanded. And Goldie delivered. She became the embodiment of joy, even when joy didn't come easily. What fans didn't see were the moments when that brightness felt heavy. In interviews years later, Goldie would quietly admit that happiness wasn't something she always felt. It was something she worked at. Anxiety followed her early in her career. Sleepless nights, racing thoughts, a fear that if the smile faded, so would the love. Instead of stepping back, she pushed forward, believing strength meant continuing no matter the cost. Hollywood rewarded her for that resilience. More roles, more praise, more expectations, and so the cycle continued. As her career soared, Goldie learned to separate who she was from who the world expected her to be. The public Goldie laughed easily, danced freely, and lit up every screen. The private Goldie questioned herself, wrestled with self-doubt, and searched for meaning beyond applause. That internal divide never fully disappeared. As the years passed, success brought fulfillment, but also loss. Relationships ended. Priorities shifted. Fame no longer felt magical. It felt demanding. Goldie began to understand that joy, real joy, couldn't survive without honesty. She stepped away from the spotlight more often. Not because she stopped loving her fans, but because she needed space to breathe. Motherhood grounded her. It gave her purpose beyond performance. But even then, the pressure didn't vanish. Aging in Hollywood came with its own quiet cruelty. Roles slowed. Attention shifted. The industry that once celebrated her youth now measured her worth differently. Goldie felt it, and at times it hurt. Yet she never let bitterness take over. Instead, she leaned into growth, meditation, mindfulness, emotional awareness. She spoke openly about mental health long before it was widely accepted. That honesty wasn't weakness, it was survival. At 80, Goldie Hawn looks back not with regret, but with realism. She knows now that happiness isn't constant, that joy doesn't mean the absence of pain, and that smiling for the world sometimes comes at a personal cost. Fans are heartbroken, not because Goldie is struggling, but because they finally understand how much she carried while making everyone else feel lighter. The woman who made generations laugh wasn't pretending, she was persevering, and that truth makes her story far more powerful than the fantasy ever was. As Goldie Hawn grew older, something shifted, not in her spirit, but in the world around her. Hollywood, the place that once celebrated her energy and sparkle, slowly grew quieter. Scripts arrived less frequently. Invitations became selective. The industry that had embraced her youth now seemed unsure what to do with her wisdom. For many actors, that transition is painful. For Goldie, it was personal. She had never defined herself solely by fame. But she couldn't ignore how quickly the spotlight moves on. Aging in Hollywood isn't just about wrinkles or gray hair, it's about visibility. It's about feeling like you're slowly fading in a space that once felt electric. And that fading can feel like lost. At the same time, life outside of Hollywood was changing too. Time has a way of reshaping everything: friendships, family dynamics, priorities. Goldie began experiencing what so many do in their later years: the realization that life is no longer expanding endlessly forward. It becomes reflective, fragile, finite. She has spoken openly about fear, not of death itself, but of time slipping away. At 80, Goldie understands the weight of that truth. There are mornings when energy doesn't arrive as easily, days when the body feels less forgiving, moments when memories hit harder than expected. The vibrant actress who once danced through scenes effortlessly now moves with awareness, with care. And yet, what breaks fans' hearts most isn't physical aging, it's the emotional honesty she's begun to share. Goldie has admitted that maintaining joy requires intention, that even now, anxiety sometimes whispers in the background, that there are nights when the world feels heavy, not because of fame, but because of humanity. She worries about her children. She reflects on past choices. She thinks about the future her grandchildren will inherit. These are not the concerns of a distant celebrity. They are the thoughts of a woman fully aware of life's fragility. For decades, she protected her public image carefully. But with age came a different kind of courage, the courage to stop pretending everything is effortless. In interviews, her voice carries softness now, depth, a quiet vulnerability that wasn't visible in her earlier years. She laughs, yes, but the laughter holds history. Long-term love with Kurt Russell has been one of her anchors. But even love evolves. After so many decades together, companionship becomes less about glamour and more about presence, about sitting together in silence, about appreciating ordinary moments. Goldie has hinted that what frightens her most isn't losing fame, it's losing connection. At 80, the tragic reality isn't scandal or dramatic collapse. It's something much quieter. It's the awareness that life, no matter how bright, is temporary. Fans who grew up watching her now see a woman navigating the same truths they are. And that reflection can feel heartbreaking, because the woman who once represented endless joy is now reminding us that nothing is endless. And yet, there's strength in the way she carries it. Goldie hasn't retreated into bitterness. She hasn't clung desperately to youth. Instead, she speaks about gratitude, about being present, about choosing happiness daily, not expecting it automatically. The tragedy isn't that Goldie Hawn is aging. The tragedy is that time moves forward for all of us, even for those who once seemed timeless, and seeing that reality in someone we love makes it impossible to ignore in ourselves. For a long time, fans believed Goldie Hawn was untouched by time. Even as the years passed, she seemed to carry the same warmth, the same playful energy that defined her earliest roles. If she appeared less often, people assumed it was by choice, a woman enjoying life on her own terms. Then something changed. It wasn't a headline or a sudden announcement. It was a series of small moments that, together, felt impossible to ignore. A softer voice in interviews, a deeper pause before answering certain questions, the way she spoke about time, not as something distant, but as something close and personal. Fans began noticing her absences. Award shows she once attended regularly passed without her. Public appearances grew fewer. When she did step into the spotlight, there was a gentleness about her that felt new, not weakness, awareness. One interview, in particular, stayed with people. Goldie spoke about fear, not dramatically, but honestly. She admitted that anxiety had been part of her life for decades, and that even now, it hadn't fully disappeared. Hearing that from someone so closely associated with joy felt jarring, comforting, heartbreaking. For many fans, It was the first time they truly saw her not as a symbol, but as a person. Social media reflected that shift almost immediately. Comments poured in, not filled with gossip, but concern. People weren't speculating, they were empathizing. They recognized themselves in her words, their own fears about aging, about relevance, about time slipping through their fingers. Goldie hadn't changed. Our understanding of her had. What fans realized in that moment was simple but painful. The happiness she represented had never been effortless. It was intentional, protected, chosen daily, and that realization hit hard. People began revisiting her old films, noticing something they hadn't before: the emotional intelligence behind the comedy, the sincerity behind the laughter. Her performances felt richer now, layered with meaning that only time could reveal. The woman who once felt eternal now felt human. And that humanity created connection. Fans didn't feel disappointed. They felt protective, grateful, moved. Many expressed sadness not because Goldie was struggling, but because they finally understood the cost of being the person who made everyone else feel okay. In public appearances, Goldie remained warm, but no longer performative. She didn't push herself to fill every space with energy. She allowed silence, reflection. That choice alone signaled something profound. She was no longer trying to be who the world remembered. She was being who she was. That shift was powerful and painful, because when a figure tied to joy allows vulnerability, it forces everyone watching to confront their own reality. Fans weren't just seeing Goldie age. They were seeing themselves move forward in time alongside her. The heartbreak wasn't about loss. It was about recognition. Recognition that even the brightest lights feel dimmer with time. That laughter can coexist with fear. That happiness isn't permanent, it's practiced. Goldie didn't announce this transformation. She lived it. And in doing so, she gave her audience something unexpected: permission. Permission to age honestly, to feel deeply, to stop pretending strength means constant. Positivity. At the moment fans realized something had changed wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, and that quiet understanding stayed with them long after the interview ended. At 80, Goldie Hawn's reality isn't tragic in the way headlines usually mean. There is no scandal, no sudden downfall, no dramatic collapse. The tragedy is quieter, and that's why it hurts so deeply. The tragic reality is this: even the people who spend their lives making others happy don't get to escape time, fear, or emotional weight. For years, Goldie represented something almost magical. She made joy look natural, effortless, like it simply existed inside her. But what fans now understand is that her happiness was never accidental. It was cultivated, protected, sometimes fought for. And fighting gets harder with time. At 80, Goldie has spoken about the emotional toll of watching the world change. Friends aging, some gone. Opportunities fewer. The pace of life slowing whether you're ready or not. These are losses that don't make headlines, but leave deep marks. She has also been honest about fear. Fear of loss, fear of suffering, fear of the unknown. Not dramatic fear, but the kind that settles in quietly during still moments. The kind that comes with deep awareness of life's fragility. That awareness is heavy. The tragic part isn't that Goldie feels these things. It's that fans realize she always has. She carried anxiety while making people laugh. She carried doubt while lighting up screens. She carried the responsibility of being the happy one while managing emotions she rarely shared. And now, at 80, she no longer hides that truth. She speaks gently, thoughtfully, with the understanding of someone who knows that pretending strength only creates distance. She allows herself to be seen not as a symbol, but as a woman who has lived fully and felt deeply. Her relationship with Kurt Russell remains a source of grounding, but even that is framed through realism now. Love isn't romanticized, it's appreciated, cherished in its quiet moments, in shared silence, in presence rather than performance. Goldie has also turned her focus toward meaning, legacy, mental health, teaching others, especially younger generations, that happiness isn't something you chase endlessly. It's something you build carefully, with honesty. Fans are heartbroken not because Goldie is unhappy. They're heartbroken because they finally see the cost of joy. They see how much effort it took to remain light in a heavy world, how much strength it required to keep smiling without denying pain, how much courage it takes to age publicly without pretending you're untouched. The tragic reality is that Goldie Hawn isn't timeless. She's human. And that truth, while painful, makes her legacy even more powerful. She didn't just entertain generations. She taught them that happiness isn't the absence of struggle. It's the decision to keep showing up with kindness anyway. At 80, Goldie's story isn't ending. It's clarifying. And while that clarity breaks hearts, it also leaves something behind that's far more lasting than laughter alone. Understanding.